Assalamu alaikum and welcome to your weekly edition of Morning Break. I'm Ammar Nashed.
And I'm Naveen Raza.
On today's show we'll be discussing various current topics as well as our usual features such as Ask the Life Coach and Book of the Week. We also have a guest in later to tell us about his inspiration behind his poetry and recitation. But now it's time for Hadith of the Week. So Naveen, what hadith have you got for us today?
This week we're talking about a hadith from the 5th Imam alayhi salam. He says, "There is no drop more loved by God than a teardrop that falls in the dark of the night from fear of God, meant solely for him and no one else."
Right, okay.
So I thought this was really interesting because there is no drop, which means there is no, whether you're talking about shedding blood for him or anything else, just what is most beloved to him is a teardrop that falls in the dark of the night. And also, if you notice in our hadith, the dark of the night and the, being alone, solitude, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without anyone else around you, without anybody else knowing about it, just you and God. That's always emphasized, isn't it, in our hadith?
It is, absolutely, and I think that's one thing that we probably overlook a lot, which is, I personally thought about this a lot during Muharram, how much it's emphasised to pray in the last part of the night.
Yeah.
And I guess it's that idea of actually you are alone, and I think when you're in that time of the night, that's when you think a lot as well, and when you really think a lot, then you realise that, one, you have so much to be grateful for, and two, you probably feel like you want to turn to Allah and ask for His mercy. And I really like this idea of how just even one teardrop is meant so much, and it really is because it's something we can all access.
Yeah.
And the idea of it not being forced as well, because if you're doing it just for Allah, it's clearly something that no one else knows that you're doing it. It's clearly something that really means a lot to you, and I really like that idea as well. That especially how we're given so much opportunity to repent and to reflect, and even that teardrop may just be because you're just so grateful for everything that Allah's given you, and I think that is beautifully put.
I agree. What I was thinking about when I read this hadith as well was the fact that when you are worshipping in the dark of the night, then nobody else knows what you're doing, so it's nothing to do with doing it for anyone else or showing off or anybody knowing that you would worship God in the middle of the night, because it's just between you and God. So I thought that was really a point that you can really draw from that, and the fact that how it is always emphasized that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves those who will give up their sleep. So while other people are sleeping, you are worshipping Him. And I think sometimes about how, even when we were at university and, when we were younger and we would go out with our friends, or after I got married, go out with my husband and, come back late at night, like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, or when we're with our families and we have gatherings and get-togethers. And, we often do stay up until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, but how many of us actually stay up praying or get up to pray, go to sleep early and get up to pray? So, we can sacrifice our sleep for all sorts of worldly things, but when it comes to worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the most important thing in our lives, and our lives are due to Him and everything we have is due to Him, then very few people actually do that. So
definitely. And just quickly as well, that really reminded me of a lecture that I heard during Muharram, which was talking about how when we love someone, whether that's our family or whether it's your husband or whoever, friends, it's easy for you to almost save the last part of the night for them. You want to sit down with your family, you want to talk to them, you want to tell them about your day, and actually when it comes to doing that with God, then we suddenly feel tired and we find that difficult. If we truly loved Allah and we truly appreciate everything He gave us, then we would, we'd look forward to that part of the night, to sitting down and just having that one-to-one with Him. And so, definitely, I love that hadith. Thank you. Okay, so this week's news story is actually featuring an article from the BBC, and it's called "Does Man Flu Really Exist?" Now, I found this really funny because often in our office at work, I've noticed that if women are ill, and this is just my, kind of what I've observed. Women come in and they'll just get on with it. They'll be feeling ill and they just carry on. Men come in and it's, all hell breaks loose. Suddenly they're ill and they're weak and they're tired and they need someone to make them a cup of tea. And so what this article is actually saying is that men actually have a weaker, well, possibly have a weaker immune system and therefore are more vulnerable to things like man flu, which again in itself is a new term. And what they said is that they've actually, University of London have carried out an experiment where they inserted flu virus into women and men. And what's interesting is actually both of them recovered around the same time. So actually, if you look into it, perhaps this concept of man flu isn't really real. It's funny that the professor has just noted at the end of the article that there was no notable difference between the recovery times of both men and women. However, the women did complain more, which I'm not sure sort of how true that is.
Turns it on its head a bit, doesn't it?
It does. But what they're saying is actually there's a huge possibility that men may have weaker immune systems, and therefore when they do catch a cold, then it probably, or a virus, it may possibly have more of an effect on them than it would do with a female. I don't know whether you guys have experienced that as well.
Interesting to note, actually, because in my house as well, and my mum always says that, when I get ill, I just have to take care of myself. But so I think reading this, I'll remember next time my husband's complaining about his, day nurse and his medicines, and can you get me this and can you get me that? Maybe it is true. I don't know if it's got to do with what responsibilities a person has on them, whether it's psychological thing, because maybe and I'm not saying that this is related necessarily to men or to women, but if you're ill over a weekend, for example, and you don't have to work. If the woman, for example, has responsibilities in the house, she still has to get on with them. Or if it's during the week and, you have to work, then maybe the man has to just get on with it. So I think maybe it's just got to do as well with what responsibilities are on your shoulders and what you have to just get on with, whether you're ill or whether you're not. If something has to be done, it has to be done.
I agree. I mean, coming from a house full of, girls, really, having no brothers, I've noticed, with my dad, for example, there's a huge difference between when my mum's ill and when my dad's ill. But again, that might be the fact that my mum has other responsibilities like around the house, etc. And so but we do make it into a bit of a joke at home about how my dad, as soon as he's ill, he's suddenly like the world's ended.
Everyone has to stop for him.
Exactly. And I think knowing that he's in a house full of women, he probably takes advantage of that as well.
I know what you mean. Okay. Well, if you have any questions or comments or any news stories that you'd like to share with us, please email us. The address is morningbreak@ahlulbayt.tv. We'd love to hear from you and your views. Now, our team went along to Salon Hijab in Edgware to find out more about Sister Mary and her new salon.
My name is Mary Al-Kudri. I'm a hairdresser and I work at Salon Hijab. My mother was a hairdresser, so I grew up around it. And then I became more interested as I got older and became a hairdresser. When I worked in other salons, people always used to say to me, how come nobody's ever done anything for the people that wear the hijab, because the shops were always open, there was no coverage on the windows. And then we built up quite a large clientele, and that was when we decided that we would open up a place like this. We do hair, beauty, laser, makeup, bridal work, pretty much everything. We cater for the sisters that wear the hijab, obviously, and because it's covered. And also we provide all services, which some salons they don't. And all the girls that work here are all Muslim sisters, that the majority wear the hijab, and also are very highly qualified. We are thinking in the future maybe to go into the gym side, maybe to increase more beauty ideas, and obviously to get a bigger premises, to go something, but to give the people that wear the hijab somewhere to go, where they don't really have much of a choice of places to go to. So that would probably give them something, where they could go and where they could meet other people and be like normal people.
Well, that's interesting. I thought that's really quite nice to see something like that, because of the fact that you don't often hear about salons that are specifically for women who actually do hijab. Yeah. And I think location-wise, that's quite easy to get to as well for most women.
Yeah, it's actually close to a train station as well, a tube station. And I've worked with them before. We did a fashion show at Salon Mosque once, and they came and they did all of our stuff for us, and they were really good and really friendly and really good service. And I really like the fact that you know, they are called specifically Salon hijab, so you don't feel uncomfortable going there. You know that they will never have men coming in and things like that. So I think it's really nice that they're catering for that segment of society. And Sister Mary, she's actually a revert. I think she reverted about 20 years ago. Right. And so she's just a really interesting person to talk to as well. So it's a great experience.
Do they have quite a large team?
They have quite, well, it's not large, but I think they have about 4 or 5 girls that work there. So yeah, it's great. You should try it out.
Brilliant. We really need more things like that really around London, don't we? And I guess across the UK as well.
Yeah,
and I think that's probably something that we're going to see more of in terms of, you know, women are going to different fields these days as well. So hopefully we'll be seeing more of that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Still to come on the show, we have Ask the Life Coach and Book of the Week, as well as an interview with our guest. So join us in a few minutes for the rest of the show.
Shedding blood for him or anything else, just what is most beloved to him is a teardrop that falls in the dark of the night. And also, if you notice in our hadith, the dark of the night and the, you know, being alone, solitude, worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala without anyone else around you, without anybody else knowing about it, just you and God. That's always emphasized, isn't it, in our hadith?
It is, absolutely, and I think that's one thing that we probably overlook a lot, which is, you know, I personally thought about this a lot during Muharram, how much it's emphasised to pray in the last part of the night. Yeah. And I guess it's that idea of actually you are alone, and I think when you're in that time... Assalamu alaikum and welcome to your weekly edition of Morning Break. I'm Ammar Mirza.
And I'm Naveen Raza.
On today's show, we'll be discussing various current topics.
He says, there is no drop more loved by God than a teardrop that falls in the dark of the night from fear of God, meant solely for him and no one else.
Right, okay.
So I thought this was really interesting because there is no drop, which means there is no, you know, whether you're talking about...
As well as our usual features such as Ask the Life Coach and Book of the Week. We also have a guest in later to tell us about his inspiration behind his poetry and recitation. But now it's time for Hadith of the Week. So Naveen, what Hadith have you got for us today?
This week we're talking about a Hadith from the 5th Imam alayhi salam.